The notice was taped to the door on a Tuesday morning. One sheet of paper, official letterhead, a red foreclosure stamp in the upper corner. Lot 14B, Carver Industrial District. Auction date, Friday, 9 a.m. Minimum bid, $800. Nadia Holt had signed the disposal order herself, though she would not remember doing so. It was one of 43 signatures that week. She was 29 years old, recently installed as head of the Holt Group's real estate division, and the portfolio she had inherited was large enough that individual line items had stopped registering as places where actual people worked. Daniel Reeves read the notice twice. He was standing in the doorway of the workshop in a gray shirt with a frayed left cuff, holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Behind him at the small table near the window, his daughter Mia was eating cereal with the concentrated focus of a 6-year-old who took breakfast seriously. Her stuffed fox, a small orange thing she called Wrench, was propped against the cereal box, positioned with care, as though it too had earned a seat at the table. He had 3 days. He did not call anyone. He set the notice on the workbench beside the current project, looked at the room the way a man looks at something he has built slowly with his own hands, and went back to work. The workshop was 1-story, corrugated roof, a roll-up door that stuck at 3/4 height and required a specific upward jolt to clear. Daniel had taken the lease 6 years ago, 2 years out of a senior materials engineering role at Crestfield Technologies, a firm that manufactured precision structural components for aerospace and defense. He had left Crestfield the week after his wife Sarah was killed. Car accident on the interstate. Mia was 4 months old. He had been in a testing facility in Tucson when the call came, and he had driven home in a state he still could not accurately describe, and he had not gone back. He opened the workshop instead. Contract fabrication work, prototype builds for small manufacturers, the occasional custom order, enough. Not comfortable, but enough. Mia spent the mornings she was not in school at a low stool at the end of the workbench, drawing in her pad or watching him work with the settled patience of a child who had learned that quiet was not the same as nothing happening. She had once asked him why metal got hot when he shaped it. He had explained friction and molecular energy transfer in more detail than was probably necessary. She was 5 at the time. She listened to all of it, then asked if they could have soup for lunch. The auction was on a Friday. 17 people stood in the parking lot of the Carver District Property Management Office at 9 a.m., investors mostly, 2 developers. Nadia Holt attended because her assistant had flagged the district as relevant ahead of a rezoning vote the following month. She stood near the front of the group in a dark coat with her phone in her hand, reading messages between lots. When the auctioneer read Daniel's name as current tenant of 14B, she looked up briefly, a man in a work shirt, nothing registered. She returned to her phone. The bidding on Lot 14B lasted less than 4 minutes. Nobody else wanted it. Daniel bought the workshop he had been renting for 6 years for $800. Nadia's assistant updated the disposition log and moved to the next line item. That evening, Daniel put Mia to bed and read to her from the book about the engineer who built a bridge out of things everyone else had thrown away. He waited until her breathing slowed and Wrench was settled firmly in the crook of her arm. Then he went back to the workshop and sat at the bench for a long time without turning on a machine. He opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet in the corner, the one with the dent from the day a compressor fitting had blown, and took out the folder he had last opened 4 years ago. 41 pages. Technical diagrams, materials specifications, stress test data, methodology notes. Filing date stamped in the upper right corner, March 14th. Title: Adaptive Pressure Distribution Matrix for Composite Load-Bearing Panels. Inventor: Daniel J. Reeves. He had never submitted it. The research had begun at Crestfield during his last year there, but the core development happened after he left. At this bench, in this building, in the 6 months after Sarah died, during the hours Mia slept. The geometry was his, the test data was his, the methodology was his. The innovation was a structural approach to composite panels that distributed load stress non-linearly across junction points, reducing material fatigue in high-pressure applications by a factor the data consistently put at 34.2%. In aerospace structural terms, that number was not incremental. It was the kind of finding that changed how things were built. He had not submitted the application because the filing fee did not exist in the month Mia was born. Then the weeks became months. The months became years. The folder sat in the drawer. The world kept moving. He did not know that Crestfield Technologies had filed a nearly identical application 14 months after he left. He had not been looking. The man who found it was named Raymond Okafor. He was 58 years old, retired from intellectual property litigation, and had a habit of stopping by the workshop on Tuesday afternoons. They drank coffee and talked about materials science. He was the closest thing to a friend that Daniel had in the district. One Tuesday in October, Raymond set his cup down and slid a printed page across the workbench without saying anything first. A technical paper published 4 months earlier by Crestfield's Structural Division. New geometric approach to composite load distribution, peer-reviewed, industry-cited. The paper had recently been attached to a licensing agreement with a defense contractor for application in a next-generation panel system. Contract value, $38 million. Daniel read the abstract. He read it again. He opened the bottom drawer without looking away from the page, took out the folder, and set it beside the printout. The diagrams were the same. The methodology was the same. The 34% figure appeared in both documents with only a 0.2% difference in the reported result. Raymond said nothing for a full minute. Then, "Your application is time-stamped 14 months before theirs. The test data is documented. The methodology is in your own handwriting. The prototype panels are in this building." Daniel set the folder down carefully. "They built a $38 million contract on your geometry," Raymond said. Not as an accusation, the way an engineer states a measurement. The building Daniel had purchased for $800 contained the workbench where the research was completed, the cabinet where the original documentation had been filed for 6 years, and the logbooks going back to Mia's first year. It also held, in a locked flat file beneath the drafting table, the 6 physical prototype panels he had built during the original testing phase. Each one labeled, each one dated, each one annotated in the same handwriting as the application. He had not thrown them away. He was a person who did not discard data. Raymond knew a specialist, Elena Voss, 46, litigation partner at a firm that worked exclusively in intellectual property. She came on a Thursday, read the folder cover to cover without speaking, and looked at Raymond when she finished. "How has this not been filed?" she said. "He had a 4-month-old, and no money," Raymond said. She looked at the flat file. At the frayed cuff on Daniel's left sleeve. "Don't move anything in this building," she said. The preparation took 9 weeks. Mia asked him once why he was so quiet in the evenings. He was tying her shoes before school. "I'm waiting to find out if something I made a long time ago still has my name on it," he said. She considered this. "Does wrench count? I made him a hat." "Yes," he said. "Wrench counts." She nodded and they left for school. Nadia Holt received the notification on a Monday morning. Intellectual property claim, subsidiary licensing dispute. She was in a budget review. She set the phone face down and continued the meeting. Her IP team processed dozens of these annually. This one reached her desk on a Thursday. Marcus, her head of legal, sat across from her in the conference room on the 24th floor and placed 2 documents side by side on the table. The Crestfield filing, the provisional application from 14 months before it, same structural geometry, same non-linear load distribution approach, same core figure, 34% reduction in material fatigue at high-pressure junctions. She looked at the name on the earlier document, Daniel J. Reeves, Lot 14B, Carver Industrial District. The number $800 arrived in her mind without being asked for. She had already placed it. She asked to see the supporting documentation. The logbooks arrived the following afternoon, 6 of them, dark green covers, the kind from hardware stores. She opened the 3rd one and read without skimming. Every entry dated, every result recorded in full. There was an entry from a Tuesday in March, 2 years before the Crestfield application, describing a pressure test on prototype panel 4 at junction points 7 through 11. Result, 34.1% fatigue reduction at threshold load. Below the result, in smaller letters, "It works. Mia is asleep. It works." Nadia read that line twice. She closed the logbook and sat with her hands flat on the desk for a moment. Then she picked up her keys and told her assistant she would be back in the afternoon. She drove herself. She had not done that in 18 months. The workshop was not hard to find. She knocked on the metal frame. The machine inside stopped. Daniel came to the door in his work shirt, safety glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked at her without surprise. He had been expecting a visit since Elena confirmed the timeline was solid. He stepped back. She came in. The workshop smelled of metal and oil. The prototype panels were on the lower shelf, in order of build date. In the corner near the window, a small table held a drawing pad and a stuffed orange fox propped against the wall with its button eyes on the door. "She's at school," Daniel said, without Nadia having asked. She looked at the workbench, the cabinet, the logbooks on the shelf. The years of it, accumulated quietly in a building she had signed away for $800 without reading the contents. "I didn't review the property file before the disposal," she said. "I know. I didn't know you were the current tenant." "I know that too." He was looking at her steadily. Not with anger. With the particular directness of a man who has been waiting a long time for a conversation he did not go looking for. "What are you asking for?" she said. He was quiet for a moment, not building to anything, just finding the honest answer. "Attribution," he said. "My name restored on the patent of record, Crestfield required to correct their published paper, and the licensing revenue from the point the application went live. Not retroactive damages, just what's owed from the date the record should have been accurate." She had come prepared for a larger number. She had come prepared for bitterness. He handed her a single sheet of paper, a settlement figure written in pencil, exact to the dollar, 2 additional items below it, neither financial, the patent correction, the published record correction. He wanted his name on the work. That was most of it. Nadia stood in the workshop holding the sheet of paper and thought about 43 signatures, and a phone face down on a conference table, and a man who had tried twice to get someone to look at what he was carrying and had eventually stopped trying and simply kept the records in a drawer in case the day ever came when someone decided to look on their own. 3 days, she said. To confirm the figures. That's fine. She moved to the door, stopped. The geometry, she said. Is there more work in that direction? Things not yet filed? He looked at her for a moment. Yes. Here? Most of it. She looked at the workshop one last time. The flat file, the logbooks, the frayed cuff, the orange fox watching the door. The settlement came back in 3 days, matching his figure without modification. The patent was formally corrected 6 weeks later. One inventor of record. The name read, Daniel J. Reeves, Lot 14B, Carver Industrial District. Raymond brought coffee the day the correction was confirmed. They drank it at the workbench without saying much. After a while, Raymond said, "You knew what was in here the whole time." Daniel looked at the flat file. "I knew the work was real," he said. "I didn't know if it would ever matter to anyone else." Raymond set down his cup. "What's the difference?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. Whether someone was ever going to stop and look. Mia came home at 3:15, found Wrench where she had left him, and told her father she had learned about load-bearing structures at school. She said a bridge worked because it shared the weight across the whole thing instead of putting it all in one place. Daniel looked at her. "That's exactly right," he said. She asked if they could have soup. He said yes. He stood at the bench for a moment in the late afternoon light. He did not think about the patent or the settlement. He thought about a line from the 3rd logbook, written at this bench in handwriting smaller than the rest, not meant for anyone. Sarah would have understood this one. He thought she would have. He turned off the bench light and went to make soup.